What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. It's the day that we have all been waiting for. It is officially, finally, Sean Clifford Deep Dive Day, and I have deprived you long enough. I know it's something that you've been dying to listen to and dying to watch, so let's not wait a second longer. Let's jump right into Sean Clifford. Let's start with the basics first, per usual. He is a 6'2", 218-pound quarterback out of Penn State, a sixth-year senior, and unlike most of Green Bay's usual draft picks that are 21, 22, maybe 23 years of age, Sean Clifford will turn 25 in July. So he is not young, but remember, Green Bay's in a bit of an interesting situation where they need a backup quarterback right now. They'd probably prefer somebody with some experience, but they can't really afford anyone on the veteran free agent market. At least I don't think they want to necessarily go in that direction. So with that in mind, they probably wanted a more experienced college quarterback who maybe could step in and be their backup quarterback right away. So only time will tell if Sean Clifford has the ability to do that, but that's probably part of their thinking and why they were willing to go with somebody who's a little bit overaged at the position. A little bit of background info. He was a two-time high school captain at his high school, one of the few people in high school history to be able to do that. In addition, he was a four-time captain at Penn State, one of the few to be able to do that as well. So this is somebody with great leadership traits and has basically been a captain for almost the entirety, 6 of the last 7 years, I guess I'll say. So that is a impressive stat, just the fact that he was captain for 6 of the last 7 years. And I'm sure that leadership trait and, the ability for him to lead a team and be a team captain is something that Green Bay valued very much, as they were potentially looking for somebody who could be a backup to Jordan Love. Statistically, he threw for over 10,000 yards in his career, 833 completions on 1,356 attempts, a 61.4% completion percentage, 10,661 yards, 86 touchdowns, 31 interceptions. He had 388 carries for over 1,000 yards, 1,073 yards, and 15 touchdowns in his career. And his best season was this past year in 2022, at least statistically, when he had 226 completions on 351 attempts, 64.4% completion percentage, 2,822 yards, 24 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions, and added 5 rushing touchdowns to that as well. So pretty good overall productivity in 2022. Athletically, he had a 9.04 RAS score. He did not do the bench press, so that was the only thing that he didn't do. Had a 4.62 40-yard dash, which was in the 92nd percentile for quarterbacks, and a 6.84 3-cone, which tested in the 94th percentile for quarterbacks. So overall, a very athletic quarterback, at least that's the way that he tested. His athletic comps, mock draftable did not have an athletic comp for him, but per RAS, his top 3 athletic comps were Deshaun Watson, CJ Beathard, and Mitch Trubisky. Talk about running the gamut a little bit there, but I think the overall athleticism that he has, the 4.6 40, and just some of the high-end testing, you could see Mitch Trubisky and Deshaun Watson certainly as some of those, higher-end athletes at the position who weren't like 4.4 40 quarterbacks, but certainly, had the athleticism needed to be able to run the football a little bit. So I think that's where you're sort of seeing those comps come in. So hopefully, maybe not quite the Mitch Trubisky or CJ Beathard, and hopefully at least the on-the-field version of Deshaun Watson, not the other way around. PFF 2018, he had a 90.3 grade. Unfortunately, it was only in 30 snaps in 2018. In 2019, he had a 71.2 grade. 2020, he had a 65.3 grade. 2021, a 70.5 grade. And in 2022, he had an 81.3 grade. Again, echoing the fact that he had his best season in 2022. All right, let's get into the full breakdown. My positives, my negatives, the things he needs to work on, the things he already does very well, and what he can potentially bring to the Packers. Again, these are my observations from watching the tape. We'll start with the positives. I do think that his maneuverability in the pocket and his ability to escape the pocket and just kind of that overall athleticism is something that is very beneficial to him, and something that I'm sure Green Bay valued as they were looking at somebody at that backup quarterback position. And this is something, quite honestly, that's just basically becoming almost a prerequisite to playing the quarterback position. And I get we are still fresh off of the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses of the world, where those quarterbacks did not need elite, speed to get outside of the pocket and make plays with their feet. But we are getting more and more in the day and age where you need to have some legitimate mobility in order to play the position, just because things are going to break down. The pass rushers are getting even better. pressure's coming from the interior more than it ever has before, and you just have to have the ability to either maneuver. Like, let's just even talk about Tom Brady for a second. He had elite maneuverability inside of the pocket. Obviously, Peyton Manning had some of that as well, as did Drew Brees, but you've got to have something, and I think he has the ability, meaning Sean Clifford, to have that mobility both within the pocket and the ability to escape the pocket and keep plays alive, which again is something that is incredibly important in today's NFL, and something, like I said, that is almost becoming a prerequisite for the position. And overall, that speed and mobility treats him very well. Over 1,000 yards rushing in his career, multiple rushing touchdowns. He had some high-end runs that he was able to, have explosive plays on some read option plays that he was able to get down the field. So I would kind of put him in that like Ryan Tannehill-esque, mobility. And maybe Tannehill was a little bit better right coming out with, being a former wide receiver and those sort of things. But I kind of put him in that sort of realm, and not too far off from like early Aaron Rodgers from a mobility standpoint either. When Rodgers first came out, we all know he had that great running ability, would scramble, get outside of the pocket. Clifford has some of that same mobility, speed, and the ability, again, to get outside and escape the pocket when he needs to. Another thing that I really liked about him is he's not afraid to throw the ball away. And we'll get into more of his decision making in just a moment, but you will see him just live to see another down. And sometimes the best throw that you can make is one that you're just chucking it into the stands. And I think he improved upon that as his time went on with Penn State. And I think that's why you saw his interceptions drop this past season, is because he has become a more mature player and knows when it's time to try to force a play, force a ball when he really has to. And in other times, he's going to live to see another down. A punt's not the worst thing in the world, especially when you've got a good defense behind you. So if that's the case and you have the ability to maybe live to see that other down, throw the ball away, no harm, no foul, and the defense will get you the ball back, and the opportunity to go, and score again, obviously. So I like the fact that he matured as his time went on at Penn State, and he, like I said, was not afraid to eat the ball and just, throw it into the stands, throw it away, whatever he needed to do to live to see that other down. He showed he could beat the blitz with his arm and with his mobility, and this is something that I think is also grew as his time went on at Penn State, but earlier when he would get blitzed, he would just kind of run and escape the pocket. As time went on, you saw him beat the blitz with his mind and with his arm a little bit more. There were a couple plays in particular where you could tell he saw double A gap blitz coming, and he, motioned out wide. And it's tough to tell with these college offenses because, he's kind of looking to the side if it was something that the coaches caught. But I do think that Clifford had a pretty good understanding of when teams were blitzing and how to beat it. And there are a couple of plays where he was getting blitzed inside and he had a blitz beater called, and he was able to get the ball out of his hands and beat that blitz with the play that either the play that was called or the play that he was checked to. Again, sometimes it's tough to tell on the tape, but overall, I love the fact that he was able to diagnose the blitz, get the ball out of his hands, and beat a blitz with his arm. But there were other times too where pressure comes up the middle and he was just able to escape out of it and make a play down the field. There have been a couple plays where guy comes off the edge and the Aaron Rodgers move where you kind of dip forward and then kind of reverse back out and reverse around and get outside of the pocket. Sean Clifford had a couple of those plays on tape as well, where he was, kind of ducked inside, rusher went inside, he backed up, escaped out of the pocket, and again, made a play downfield. So has the ability to beat a blitz with both his arm and with his mobility. You will also see him make some pretty impressive off-platform throws. I saw him fading away, make a couple of really impressive completions. He'll drop his arm angle when he absolutely has to. So this is also basically becoming a prerequisite to playing the quarterback position. Things are not going to be perfect. There is not going to be a clean pocket over and over. You're going to have to throw from some odd platforms, some odd angles. You're going to have to make plays on the run. You're going to have to escape pockets. Like, you're just going to have that mobility and playmaking. And I saw Sean Clifford have some of that. He wasn't afraid to throw off platform, off angle, throw on the run, whatever he needed to do to complete passes. He could throw it to his left. He could throw it to his right, meaning like rolling left and rolling right. So I like the fact that he could throw from different arm angles and different platforms, and it didn't have to be perfect in order for him to complete passes. He also really likes the pump fake, and he did it pretty well. There would definitely be times where double moves, he was able to pump fake, corners and get plays down the field to wide receivers. There are other plays where he'll pump outside, pump down the field, and then pump back outside to his check down or to his swing player, whether it be a running back or a wide receiver. He's not afraid to to, pretend to let that ball rip. And it can take, corners and safeties off guard a little bit from time to time. So he's been pretty effective with the pump fake, and it's something that he uses to his advantage when he does do it. He also knows where his checkdowns are. He knows his offense well, and whether it's, again, a swing player to the side, whether it's a check down and tight end running back in the middle of the field, he knows where they are and he's not afraid to use them. Again, there have been multiple times where he's scanning downfield and the play's just not there, and all of a sudden pressure comes. And again, sometimes he'll use his legs, but he's not afraid to use those checkdowns either. So love the fact that he knows his offense, knows where those checkdowns are, and is not afraid to use them. The other thing that I like, especially with his mobility, is that there are a lot of quarterbacks that, maybe they're going to make their read and then the read's not there and the pressure comes and he's going to take off running and it's just one read and run, or maybe one read, two read and run. With Clifford, when he's escaping, when he is, whether it's, dancing in the pocket to kind of keep the play alive or escaping outside of the pocket, he's consistently keeping his eyes downfield. And that's one of the things that I really like. There was a play that I posted on Twitter where there's a bunch of chaos, everything's going on. He sort of escapes, inside of the pocket a little bit, is dancing around. Guys are flying through his, windows that he's trying to throw in, but he keeps his eyes downfield the entire time. And before taking a hit, he makes that throw down the field. And had he not kept his eyes up, had he just, dropped his eyes, watched the pass rush and, or looked to run, he wouldn't have made that play down the field. So I love the fact that when he is scrambling, when he is escaping the pocket, he consistently keeps his eyes down the field. He also seems to have a pretty good control of the line of scrimmage. And by all accounts, it seems like he, is a fairly smart guy. And I think you could tell that he had a good grasp of his offense. Now, he was a fifth-year senior, but good grasp of the offense. It looked like he was legitimately making some checks at the line of scrimmage, had good control, had good leadership. And those are all things that are very important as you carry over, especially if you are going to be a potential backup quarterback and can get called on any given play. If there's an injury ahead of you, you got to know the offense. You got to know everything that's going on. You got to be able to step into some pretty crazy situations. And I think his control of the offense at Penn State, again, him being team captain for, 6 of the last 7 years in high school and college, and just those sort of things. Again, it sounds like he's pretty smart. I think that's going to translate well as he goes to the NFL and tries to own and operate a new NFL offense and sort of gain ownership of that as well. So love the fact that he had that control at the line of scrimmage. Also had a pretty strong, both upper body and lower body to, slide off of potential sacks and break some tackles. And there were a lot of times where pressure got to him and he was just kind of able to shake off the sack. Either there was a couple on his upper body, a couple on his lower body. He was very slippery in that regard. So again, when you have the ability as a quarterback to potentially, save yourself from a sack and actually be able to make a play down the field still because you had that ability to break that tackle or break that sack, that is another really nice skill set to have. And he showed that on multiple occasions. He's also comfortable playing under center. Now, you watch Penn State, they had a ton of shotgun spread concepts, some RPO stuff. There was a lot of that, and it was mostly that. But they did run some under center stuff, and he looked totally comfortable doing it. So wasn't something that they did a ton of. Was certainly not their primary offense, was him under center. But he did do it from time to time and looked totally comfortable doing so. Also really liked his toughness in the pocket. He would make some throws that took some business decisions. And Ben Fennell always calls these job description throws. Part of your job description as a quarterback is to step up in the pocket and deliver a seed to a wide receiver that's coming open down the field, even when you know you are going to get hit hard. And sometimes there's those linebackers or those defensive tackles, edges, whatever it is, creeping up on you. And the only window to make this completion is if you hold the ball a second longer and then rip the ball knowing that hit's going to hit you very, very hard. He had some of those on tape and he bounced right back up and had that toughness and was willing to deliver those throws. And like I said, didn't start dropping the eyes, didn't try to, cower down from the hit. Like, he took the hit, delivered the ball downfield, and you could see that he had a level of toughness to him. I did think that he worked through progressions. We're going to talk about more on this in just a second as well, but you did see him go from left to right or from read 1 to read 2 to read 3, and he wasn't afraid to go through those progressions. And then again, knowing where his checkdowns were at the end. So you did see some progression-based offense with Sean Clifford. He did run a RPO-based offense, and I do think that this is going to be something that translates over to what Matt LaFleur is going to want to do. I think we saw some similar concepts and some similar ideas at Penn State of what Matt LaFleur likes running in Green Bay, and I'm sure would build a offense sort of catered around Clifford and what he did at Penn State in the emergency situation if he did need to play this upcoming season for the Packers as a backup quarterback. I think there are some concepts that carry over and would help Clifford quite a bit if all of a sudden he needed to play as a rookie or second year player in Matt LaFleur's offense. Love the experience. Again, 6-year senior, has played, 5 years, 4 years as a starter and 4 years as a team captain. So you love the experience. You love what he was able to do at a high-end program and have, build up some pretty good statistics and had a lot of wins at Penn State. And again, the leadership traits as well are something that certainly is very important to Green Bay. Those are the positives. Now, the interesting thing on Clifford is I have negatives here, probably 4, 6, 8. I probably have 8 negatives here for Clifford. That's not that many. And it might seem like, how is there only 8? You had a lot of positives for Sean Clifford and only 8 negatives? That seems kind of crazy. The 8 negatives, though, there's a few in here that are like the important ones. And that's why it may not seem like there's as many as there are the positives, but the negatives here are some of the really important things that it takes to be a quarterback specifically in the NFL. The first one is decision making. And yes, he was able to cut down his interceptions this past year. Yes, he's willing to throw the ball away and, live to see another down when needed. But there will also be plays where he just throws into coverage, either doesn't see a player or just makes a poor decision. And, the 30 plus interceptions during his time at Penn State, that is something that's going to have to get cleaned up. And there were more opportunities for defenders on the table. And in the NFL, they're going to jump those routes. They're going to make picks. They're going to end up being pick sixes. So he just needs to do a much better job of taking care of the football and using some of the things that he learned, and specifically this past season, throwing the ball away a little bit more, just being a little bit more cognizant of, especially now, NFL defenders, and not giving them the opportunity to get their hands on the ball and really change the game in the opposing team's favor. So decision making definitely needs to improve. And right along with that is accuracy. And even when he's throwing completions, there's a lot of times where the receiver has to do a little bit extra, or they're not being able to get the yards after the catch because Clifford is making them work a little bit more for the catch than probably what it should be. So, we look at the completion percentage. You'd love to see that more 65, 66%, even higher maybe, especially in an RPO-based offense. He's more in the 62% range. And you just want to see a little bit, better level of accuracy, especially even on the completions, just to make things easier on his wide receiver. So that is something that's ultimately going to have to improve as well. You will see him double clutch at times. So there are a couple plays on tapes. There was an interception here as well, where he kind of double clutches and then throws the ball anyway, where he just needs to let that ball rip. And that double clutch has cost him. There was one play in particular that he double clutched it and it ended up being an interception. So you can't have that. If you're not sure, don't throw it. And if you are going to throw it, you just need to grip it and rip it and not double clutch, because that's just giving the defender more time to go and make a play. So that's something that he's going to have to improve a little bit. As I mentioned, he goes through progressions, and you love to see that. You love that he can go A, B, C, or just kind of, knowing what his offense wants out of a given play. However, that progression processing is a bit too slow. You need to see him go from A to B to C to D with a little bit more emphasis and a little bit more urgency. Because right now it's like, all right, is A going to come open? Nope. All right, let's go to B. Nope, B's not still coming. Oh, there's pressure. I need to escape. Or it's like A, all right, B, maybe look back at A for a second, then go to C. It just needs to be A, B, C, D, check down or run, whatever you need to do at that point. But it just needs to become a little bit more quick with the processing, reading pre-snap what the defense is trying to do, having that all go through your mind as you're sort of processing the play, and then getting quickly through those progressions based on what the defense is doing. So that needs to be sped up a little bit. Doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. It's not a bad arm. It's a fine arm. It'll certainly play in the NFL, but he's not a guy that's just going to grip it and rip it and you're just going to be wowed by his arm strength. But it's a good enough arm, no question about it, but it's not an elite arm. Let's just put it that way. The ball does come a little bit out of his hands inconsistently. There are times where you will see him grip it and rip it, tight spiral, right on target, and it looks great. There are other times where that thing's wobbling and fluttering, and it just doesn't look anywhere near what it does on some of the other plays. So just inconsistency on how the ball is coming out of his hands. He needs to throw with better anticipation, and that's like 99% of college quarterbacks, so that's not necessarily just a Clifford thing, but you would love to see him be able to get to his drop and before the receiver breaks, start throwing some of those balls rather than waiting for the receiver to break and then throw it. It's just in the NFL, defenders are going to rip that and pick that off and take it the other way. So Jaron Hall, who was on the board at the time, had a couple of really, really great anticipation throws, including to the opposite hash. I thought that would have been maybe a different direction direction that Green Bay could have gone in there, but they like Clifford, and that's something that he's definitely going to have to work on, is just throwing with a little bit more anticipation. And the last thing I'll say from a negative standpoint is, outside of like a 4.640 speed, which is pretty nice and some good agility, there's no special trait with Sean Clifford. There's limited, I would say, overall upside with that. I don't think he doesn't have a great arm. He doesn't have great size. He has really nice like mobility and speed, but we're not talking about like 4.40 speed. We're not talking about Anthony Richardson speed or anything like that. It's like good. It's 4.6 speed is good, but it's not like going to set him apart from like the elite of the elite when it comes to mobility or things like that, right? He doesn't have like insane processing. He doesn't have, the ability to, get through those progressions as quickly as possible. Like, he has some turnover issues. Like, it's not like he's this tremendous, guy that's never going to turn the ball over and just takes great care of the football like Aaron did. Like, there's not one thing that you can look at and be like, all right, that's special, and that's something that you can really build on. Now, he does have the leadership traits. He does have sort of the intangibles that play very, very well. He has the experience, played at a big program. There's some things there that I think Green Bay sunk their teeth into and really liked about him, and I can understand it. But from like a high-end upside sort of play, I just don't think it's there. I think his high-end upside is probably as a NFL backup is probably the best that it's probably going to get. You never quite know. Things have been shocking before. I don't think anyone saw Brock Purdy coming a season ago, so you never quite know, but I don't necessarily see those special traits on tape for Sean Clifford. As far as what he can bring to Green Bay, that he's going to compete for the backup spot right away. That's sort of by default, but I think he can compete for a backup spot in the NFL. He's going to be a cheap option with a lot of college experience. So they kind of got like their experienced quarterback in a roundabout way, just at the college level, 6-year senior, a lot of snaps played, a lot of yards at Penn State without having to break the bank for a veteran QB. I think he's going to be someone that has run some of the same concepts and systems as Matt LaFleur likes to run, and hopefully that helps him in Green Bay. And he's, let's just be real, probably a potential fall guy if Jordan Love were to get hurt. I've mentioned it in the past, but if you bring in a Matt Ryan or a Carson Wentz, someone like that, they might win a few games in those situations with this team. And I think if Jordan Love goes down, that's not necessarily what you're looking for. You might just be looking for, all right, let's see what this Sean Clifford guy has, but if we lose the rest of our games because Jordan Love's out for the remainder of the year, it's not the worst thing in the world. Let's just go out and get the highest draft pick possible. So if they do only go with Sean Clifford as the backup, he might ultimately be the guy that kind of has to fall on the sword and take a fall on a season that probably is going to be a little bit lost because Jordan Love ultimately got hurt. My final thoughts on Sean Clifford. I know a lot of people were upset that Green Bay picked him in the 5th round. And a lot of people, and I talked to Tony Pauline about this, and we're very convinced that had Green Bay not taken him in the 5th round, he would not have been drafted at all. I don't think it's crazy that Green Bay had a draftable grade on Sean Clifford. I really don't. And I would totally understand a 7th round grade and wouldn't even necessarily disagree with it. Like I could put a 7th round grade on Sean Clifford and have no problem with that whatsoever. I think he's definitely within that realm. I think the idea that he's just this terrible undrafted guy that had no right to be drafted or anything like that, I think that's a little bit of groupthink, and based on some of the struggles he did have at times at Penn State. I think if you just look at some of the upside that he has, the mobility, the agility, pretty decent ball that he throws more often than not. Like I think the leadership traits, I think there's enough there that you can put a draftable grade on him. That said, I do very much agree that a 5th round pick was aggressive at best. Like, here's the thing, and by all means, if they had a 5th round grade on him or whatever, and they felt they really wanted him at that spot, go get your guy. It's not the end of the world. I personally am, again, more of like I'm probably more lenient here, and I'm still saying, like, I think a 7th round grade would have made sense. And here's the other thing. If somebody else did like Sean Clifford, and we might say, and everyone might say, hey, nobody else was going to draft Sean Clifford. Nobody thought Green Bay was going to draft Sean Clifford. So if all it takes is one more team, like just if one more team likes him and is willing to spend a 6th round pick on him, then Green Bay loses their guy, or maybe even an early 7th before Green Bay's 7th round picks came up. Green Bay loses their guy, and now they're without a quarterback in the draft. So I can semi-understand it. I think they reached in the 5th round, and the one thing I will say is, what if they missed on him? I don't think it's the end of the world if they missed on Sean Clifford. Like, figure out something else, go in a different direction, work with an XFL guy. It probably doesn't matter all that much. That's why I probably would have went with a different position in the 5th round, or maybe even a Jaron Hall if they were going to go quarterback. But I do, fight back a little bit at the idea that this was not a draftable quarterback and that it was just a total, not even a priority free agent, just a guy that was just a total. I don't see it that way. I think a 7th round grade would have been totally fine on Sean Clifford, but I just think Green Bay overdrafted him just a little bit. I am very much intrigued to see how he performs at OTAs, mini camps, and ultimately training camp and in the preseason. I do think there's a little bit of something there that he hasn't totally gotten credit for. I saw a little bit of Kirk Cousins in him, just a little bit, just a little Kirk Cousins in him from time to time. And maybe like Kirk Cousins as a day 3 pick was a 4th round pick. Maybe Sean Clifford can have a similar sort of Big Ten to NFL. Everyone was expecting RG3 to be the guy, and it ended up being Cousins was ultimately better than him. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with Clifford and Love or anything like that, but you never quite know how these things are going to work out. And I am very intrigued to see how he handles the remainder of the offseason and if he can actually win the number 2 quarterback job. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.